Hello, 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 my burned out friends. I would love to have a conversation with you today about when did it all change? When did stuff shift? When did work go from becoming, when did work go from being a good challenge, something that really energized you, to a daily grind where you are in back-to-back meetings and you can't even get any of your own work done. You end up doing that in the evening or on the weekends. When did it go from hitting 4 to 6, maybe even 7 day a week workouts that really, energized you and jived you, making you feel strong and capable and, really fit, to barely squeezing in 1 or 2 workouts a week and feeling stressed out when you do? When did it go from having a hobby, something that actually lit you up, that you had fun with, that relaxed you, that you enjoyed, that you don't even love doing anymore, that you can't even find time for, because by the time you get to the end of your day, you collapse on the couch and you're either doom scrolling social media, you're binge watching a couple shows with a couple glasses of wine, and you just collapse into bed at the end of the night. I hear this all the time from the women I work with. And I'm here to tell you that it does not have to be this way. It does not. Most of the women I'm talking to are high achieving leaders. They are business women, maybe even some of them business owners, who used to feel just on top of their game. They were running on all cylinders. And then all of a sudden they realized that they are just exhausted all the time. And no amount of sleep ever helps that. They might feel good for a day because they get a really good night's sleep. And it just comes right back to not enough sleep, feeling exhausted. They're running on autopilot. They're just struggling to find time for anything that really matters to them outside of work. How does this happen? We're going to talk about this invisible shift. How does this happen? I'm sure you've heard about the boiling frog effect, that you don't just wake up one day and decide to burn yourself out. It happens bit by bit. A few extra meetings here and there, saying yes to a meeting here, schedule a meeting over your lunch hour, a little bit less sleep, thinking you'll catch up later, skipping workouts because your work or your family needed you more, replacing personal time with mindless distractions because you're just too exhausted to do the things you really love. Saying yes to one more project, one more responsibility, one more ask, until you realize there is nothing left of you. And it might be physical things. We'll talk about that in a minute. So why don't you see it coming? Why is it that this sneaks up and all of a sudden we're in burnout? When you're under stress, your nervous system kicks in. It goes into overdrive. It goes into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. And when that stress continues or escalates, your body doesn't have the time to come back to normal, to come back to homeostasis. You're just in constant stress. You may feel like you're functioning, getting by, surviving, but you're never really thriving. And if you keep this pace up, your body is eventually going to force you to stop with some sort of chronic illness, some sort of chronic disease, some sort of cancer. It's going to force you to stop. And I talk about this all the time with clients that I talk to, is that one woman I talked to, every 6 months or every few years, she had to quit for 6 months. Every 3 to 4 years, she quit her job for 6 months to recover from the burnout that she created over those 3 to 4 years. There are costs to living like this. The first one are physical. And this could just be constant fatigue, where your brain is never operating at optimum. You're not able to solve the problems like you used to be able to. You're not able to think strategically like you used to be able to. You're not able to think creatively like you used to. your sleep is disrupted, whether it's not being able to fall asleep or not being able to stay asleep. You might wake up at 3 a.m. and like, okay, I am on. My brain is just going. You might have unexpected or unexplained weight loss or weight gain. Chronic stress can lead to inflammation, illness, burnout. When we're under constant stress, our immune system is damped down. It is turned off. When we're in fight, flight, or freeze, all our body wants to do is survive. And our immune system, unfortunately, we think it's necessary, but our reptilian brain doesn't think it's necessary to keep us from being eaten by a lion. And that's what it thinks stress is that we're actually literally going to die now. Now, excuse me. The second cost to living like this is kind of a twofold cost. It's mental and emotional. It might show up as brain fog. It might show up as lack of focus. It might show up as irritability. It might show up as just being emotionally numb, where you don't feel crappy, but you don't never feel good. You can never get to that really excited, happy, joyful feeling anymore. And I know I've been there, and it hasn't been that long ago that I was getting into that cycle again. Or you're on edge all the time. Your capacity to regulate your emotions goes out the window when you're in fight, flight, or freeze. When we don't have sufficient recovery time in that rest and digest stage, time when our nervous system comes out of fight, flight, or freeze from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. Fight, flight, or freeze is sympathetic. Parasympathetic is that rest and digest. Without those sufficient recovery periods, you deplete your resiliency and you can get into physical and emotional and mental exhaustion. Now, another cost is a cost to your relationships. You might just not be able to be present because you can't focus, or because you're so worried about things going on at work, or you're on your phone because you have to answer one more email, or you might be snapping at people, again, because your emotional capacity, your emotional regulation is out the window. It's turned off because in fight, flight, or freeze, our emotional capacity, that part of our brain, is not online. We might feel disconnected, or we might struggle just to be there in that moment with them. And they feel that disconnection just as much as it is there. They feel it. Ironically, when you're working like this, hour after hour after hour after hour, evening after evening after evening after evening, weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend, this actually reduces your effectiveness. Your creativity tanks. Your decision-making suffers. You're reactive instead of strategic and responsive. Now, there are ways to shift. So we're going to kind of shift into that now. We're going to talk about shifting from that survival mode, which literally our brain in that stress mode feels like it's in survival, life or death. There's a lion at the door ready to eat you. And so the first thing, we think we have to do something different. And while in some ways it's true, the first step is really to see what's happening clearly. First, you have to stop accepting that exhaustion is normal. It's not. Just because it is common doesn't mean it's normal. Now, there's a whole book called The Myth of Normal and another book called Normal Sucks, which I recommend both of those books. I haven't finished The Myth of Normal yet. And that one's by Dr. Gabor Mate, and I don't remember the author of Normal Sucks, but it's also a very, very good book. But really start to observe. Just give yourself space to observe yourself. Observe what's happening and recognize when you're operating from that survival mode. And see if you can start to shift from that autopilot back to back to back to back to back meetings to, having space, to being more intentional with how you want to expend your energy. Not just your time, but how you want to leverage your energetic being, because it's your energy that allows you to be creative, that allows you to be decisive, that allows you to be strategic. It isn't just time. Because if you create an hour in your day and you're just as stressed and your brain is still thinking about all those things, that hour isn't going to do you any good. You have to get it to a point where you can actually come into that rest and digest mode and know, okay, I'm getting a little bit out of my pattern. I'm into the pattern of stress. I'm into this pattern of escalation of stress. How can I bring it back down so that I can get into rest and digest and leverage the time that I have? Use that energy and time to create, to be a creative leader. And I don't mean artistic, I mean creative problem solving, innovation, strategy. Those are the things that you were hired to do and hired to be. So let's talk about 3 shifts that you can make and how can you start to reclaim your time and your energy, even if it's just in small ways. So the first thing I'm going to encourage and challenge you to do is see if you can protect one boundary. Start with one. Maybe it's a lunch break, that you make sure that a minimum of 1 day a week at work, you actually take a full lunch break. And maybe for a while it's 30 minutes. Maybe after a while you really make it a full hour of turning your brain onto something else. Because I'm telling you, so much research, there is so much research behind this, that if you can put your brain into something else, let's say it's a puzzle or a crossword puzzle or reading a book that has nothing to do with your work, it actually will take things. You can tell your brain, okay, just put this problem on the back burner, or as an old boss of mine used to say, on the B drive, and then go about doing something else that isn't work related and give your brain active rest. It can exponentially help your problem solving. So see if you can do that. One break, put one boundary in place. And it might be 10 minutes in the morning before you check your phone. It might be that 1 day a week, you're not going to do anything after, let's say, 5 o'clock or 5:30 p.m. So that's the first thing. Another way to reclaim your time and energy is to swap the doom scrolling on social media or stop the mindless TV for something intentional. Even if it's for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, see if you can find something that truly lights you up. Maybe it's a great book. Maybe it's some sort of indulgent novel that you like to read. Even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, see if you can stop the numbing activities and see if you can do something intentional. The third way you can reclaim your time and energy is to, instead of seeing movement, exercise as a to-do, have to get it in, have to start, have to finish, have to get this much in, have to do this many, reframe it as a way to really release stress and restore energy. And when I say release stress, I don't mean working out just as absolutely hard as you can. Sometimes that's good, and you have to be in tune with the quality of your energy during that workout. And maybe that's the first thing you start with. You start with just paying attention to the quality of your energy during your workouts. And maybe you cut your workout, let's say you try to get in an hour every time. Lately, I've been able to get in 30 to 45 minutes in the mornings before work. On the weekends, hour and a half I can do. But in the morning before my day starts, before I start having clients or doing client work, lately it's been 30 to 45 minutes. And I had to intentionally allow myself, that's okay. I'm getting something in. I'm doing something good for my body. So that's one thing of one way, that's one of the shifts is reclaiming your time and your energy. Protect one boundary, swap your doom scrolling or mindless TV for something intentional, and then see if you can just reprogram how you're looking at, like really see movement, reframe it as a release of stress and as a restoration of energy. The second shift that I want you to think about or challenge you to make is to reprogram how you see productivity. If you see and value, if how you see and value yourself is tied to how much you do, you're always going to feel behind. You're always going to feel like there's that one more thing you have to do before you're done. Let me tell you, this is so common, and it is such one of my bad habits is I always feel like there's one more thing I could be doing. One, even if it's at home when I'm around the house doing things that I think should be done around the house, watering plants, mopping the floor, whatever it is. Really start asking yourself. There's a book actually, productivity isn't about doing more. It's about being effective. That's what truly matters. Being effective with what matters most. If you want to read a book about this, there's one by Mark Evans called Mule versus the Magician. And I won't go into it. If you want to hear a little more about it, tomorrow night I do a live webinar, a full hour webinar where I that's one story I share in about being the magician versus the mule. And that may sound strange. And I really want to challenge you to start asking yourself, what would actually move the needle? And it's going to be different for everyone. What would move the needle? What's going to move the needle this week? Instead of just checking off all the to-dos, all the tasks, all the things that someone else may have said you have to get done or you think you have to get done, challenge yourself to look at your list again and say, what are the 3 things this week? Or maybe even it's one that would actually move the needle. And then the third thing that I want to recommend or suggest or offer you, the third shift is to reconnect to what really matters most. I want you to think about, maybe even just pause for a moment and think about, when was the last time you felt alive, really alive, where you were really in touch with this feeling of excitement or joy or happiness or anticipation. I know for me, it was this past Friday night. I went to a candlelight concert. It was a string quartet playing the music of Queen. It was incredible. And I was like a kid waiting at the, in the front line of an amusement park. I was so excited. And I just let myself really be completely absorbed in the moment of the music and let it just flow through me. I had so much joy and so much excitement that evening. And I want you to really think about that. When was the last time you felt really alive and not just functioning, not just surviving? What's one thing that you used to really love that has fallen by the wayside? I know for me, it's my photography. I haven't really gone out, taken my camera and just gone down to the park, gone down to the lake, and just found things that inspired me and took photos. Give yourself permission to reintroduce something that brings you joy, that gives you a sense of playfulness without guilt. So I'd really love to hear in the comments which of these 3 shifts resonates with you most, and what is one small change that you're willing to commit to today. Please take that one small step. I'm not kidding you. If you come to my webinar tomorrow, you'll hear about why truly your life could depend on it. If this hits home, let's talk. There's a link in my contact info or you can DM me, you can email me. connect with me, and let's set up a one-to-one, and we'll talk about how I help women leaders navigate all of this in my one-to-one coaching. So if you're ready to get out of survival and really reclaim your energy, let's set up a chat. Looking forward to meeting you. Have a great rest of your week.